So the popular TV show, This Is Us, it debuted on NBC back in September of 2016. It was chosen by the American Film Institute as the top television show of the year. So the mom in this series, if you're familiar with it, delivers triplets 6 weeks early. Kate and Kevin, despite being born premature, were fine, but the third, a biological brother, was stillborn. And having expected to bring home 3 babies, they decide to adopt Randall, a black child born on the same day that was abandoned at a nearby fire station. This series, it takes place in Pittsburgh. Episodes weave sort of stories of each person and how they deal with the baggage of resulting from this upbringing. The show's sort of main point, it said in one of the summaries, it drives home the point that families are complex. Amen? Families are complex, right? Let me tell you about another complex family. There's a man named John Claude who grew up in an orphanage in Haiti. He's now a grown man. He's an incredible pastor, currently leading one church and planning another. He met a woman by the name of Monica, who was originally actually from Pennsylvania, but was doing mission work in Haiti, and they got married. And they couldn't have children of their own, so they began caring for at-risk and orphan kids within their community. And with the assistance of one of our mission partners, the Pittsburgh Kids Foundation, they built New Vision Children's Home, and they are currently caring for and in the process of adopting 12 children. Talk about complex, right? They were in need of some spiritual and pastoral care, so Tina and I led a small team there last week. And our goal, please hear this, our goal was this, simply to love this family through a difficult time. And we spent 3 incredible days with them, watching the craziness of mealtime and playtime in all its complexity, yet unbelievable beauty. And we were honored, literally, to serve this family. There were times where Monica would sometimes apologize for the craziness. And at the end of our time with her, though, she shrugged her shoulders and said, "This is us." And today we launch a series, 3 parts, called This Is Us. And a couple things about this series I want you to sort of be aware of right up front. One, it's intended to be what I would call like an internal series, and meaning that the series is aimed at people that call Northway home or trying to determine whether or not they want to call Northway home. So if you're here today and you're not even sure you believe in God, let alone whether or not you're trying to figure out whether you're going to come to church here, please hear me say this. Welcome. Like, man, so glad that you are here. I've said this many times from this platform. If there is ever a single weekend at Northway where our rooms do not have folks in them that do not believe in God, then we've failed as a church. You are why we are here. And this is a safe place for you to sort out who God is. And this series should really then give you some insight into what it means to follow God as part of a church community. The second thing about this series is this. This series is not about like Northway Us as it pertains to our locations or our facilities. It's not about a building. This is not about a church service. It's about us. It's about people, those that attend one of those locations. So big statement right up here, right up front, and I'm going to pull apart throughout this sermon. My hope is Northway never becomes mostly known for its events, programs, preaching, or worship. My hope is that we are known by us, by the people of Northway, and the way that they love people, where they live and work and play. And I want to lay down sort of a concept to you right in the beginning here. And this concept was birthed out of actually some study and some work that I've been doing actually for next Easter's teaching series. And what I've been digging into has been trying to sort through what was the culture of Jesus' day like? The culture that Jesus grew up in. And I'm telling you what I have discovered, the more I've learned about the culture, the more that the stories of Jesus have grown in significance and impact to me personally. Jesus was a Jew, and he grew up in a very Jewish and religious family. And in his culture, and now get this, in his culture, people did not primarily think of themselves as individuals. In that culture, people primarily saw themselves as part of a larger community. So stay with me. I'm going to get a little Hebrew sort of, culture nerdy on us here, and I don't want you to zone out on me. So first and foremost, in that culture, they found their identity in this Hebrew word, beit-ah. And it basically means your household. They found their identity in who their mother and their father was. You were only as strong as your household. And then from there, their identity was deeply rooted in their extended family or their family lineage. And it's this word, mishpaha. And then from there, their identity next became rooted in the shevemata. And that meant their tribe that they belonged to. And then lastly, overarching all of this, their identity was deeply rooted in the Yisrael, the people that they were, the nation that they were. So to pull that together for you, growing up, Jesus would have identified himself this way. He would have said, I am the firstborn of the household of Mary and Joseph. I'm from the line of King David. I'm from the tribe of Judah. And I belong to the nation of Israel. Does anybody introduce themselves that way today? But that was their culture back then. It was deeply rooted in family and in community. And this importance of communal identity is why you so often see in the Bible, like a person's name followed by their father's name. We just came through the disciple series, right? And anytime that James and John were spoken of, the disciples, it almost always said, the sons of Zebedee. The first time John the Baptist is mentioned in the Bible, he's called John, the son of Zechariah. See, in the Old Testament book of Joshua, chapter 2, I think it further sort of illustrates this point that I'm going to get to here, so stay with me. In this story of the Battle of Jericho, if you're familiar with this story, there's a woman lives in Jericho named Rahab, and she hides these Israelite spies and allows them safe passage through a window in her wall. And before they escape, she says to these spies, she says, now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house. And that's that word, Beit-eh. And give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. So in return for her bravery, these spies promise her in verse 18, behold, when we come into the land, you shall tie the scarlet cord in the window through which you will let us down, and you shall gather into your house your father and your mother and your brothers and your household. And there's that word, it's mishpaha right there. See, all of your identity in this culture was wrapped in your community, in your family. Rahab was doing simply what everybody else in this culture would have done, looking out for one another. I'd go as far as to what Rahab's saying here is that her life would be meaningless if she had to do it without her community. You know, the Old Testament shows packed with these incidents of almost the opposite, wherein an individual's sin had a costly and sometimes deadly ramifications on their entire household, their family, and even their tribe. So here's another example of this cultural mindset, and then I promise I'm going to get to my point. It's recorded in Luke 2. The young boy, Jesus, his family leaves Jerusalem. And when it says his family left Jerusalem and unbeknownst left him behind, it wouldn't have just been like mom and dad and the brothers leaving. It had been their entire community leaving this festival. Their family, that might have represented hundreds of people leaving this festival on their way home. And if you know the story, they realize that Jesus is no longer with them. They come back, they find him 3 days later, they're looking for him, and he's engaged, he's teaching in the temple. And this is what Mary says to him, son, why have you treated us so? Hang on to that word us. Behold your father. And I've been researching that word us there, what she's saying there is, why did you treat us, our entire community, our household, our family, all of us? Why did you embarrass us that way? Anger us, distress us? My point is to say this, that the culture and the community of Jesus' time was profoundly different than the one we live in today. See, in America, in Western culture, I believe that we value independency and individuality way more than we do community. Our culture is an I and a me culture. Like let's face it, we love these stories of the underdog, of people like being incredibly independent, the loner that rises up against all odds and overcomes. We teach our children this. I think at a young age, we challenge them to go off on their own and be themselves and be all that you're supposed to be. Be successful. Chase your dreams, right? And please hear me on that. A lot of that's a very good thing. Like, I'm not putting that down. A lot of that, making your own way, that's a very admirable quality to have. However, I wonder if we haven't lost something very important when we place a higher value on independence than we do on community. In America today, folks, we have great access to independence. Individuality is right at our fingertips. It's right there for the taking. Well, what do I mean by that? Here's some example. In America, jobs are available. You might not necessarily get the one that you want, but jobs, a way to produce income, a way to become independent, are available to us. School loans and grants so that you can continue your education, government assistance programs, the ability to be able to join the military. We have lots of opportunities to become very independent. And if you stumble or even crash out there while you're out there on your own, we have food banks and homeless shelters and dozens of other safety nets to sort of catch us in those rough spots. Now, I know this is, again, a big, bold statement here, but I think that at times our culture, what it does, it presses us to believe that we can do everything on our own and that we don't need to depend on community, on family, or on church. And that couldn't be any further than the truth from the culture that Jesus grew up in. And frankly, a lot of cultures around our world today. So over the next couple minutes, I just want to tell you about a young girl, a Haitian girl by the name of Rosaline. At a very young age, due to extreme poverty in Haiti and being in a very unhealthy home, she found herself not being cared for. And a pastor that was traveling through her village saw this and removed her from her home and had her brought to an orphanage in Cap-Haïtien, Haiti. There's a picture of her when she was 5, brought there. There she had a safe place to sleep, food to eat, and an opportunity for education. And when she was 15, my wife Tina and I met her on our first trip to Haiti. And since then, Tina and her have become extremely close. For the last 6 years, through the wonders of technology and Facebook, they have talked nearly every single week, sometimes every single day. She calls Tina mom, and we call her daughter. And within the last year, she turned 21 years old. And sadly, and I think I'll even go as far as to say tragically, she sort of aged out of the orphanage that she was in. She was left with a very challenging decision. One, the orphanage would have taken her back home. Her mom lived 6-7 hours from where the orphanage was. And her mom, a mother that she has barely seen over the last many years. And her mom made it clear to her that she couldn't provide for her. But she had a second choice. Through this incredible help of our partners in Haiti, they found a woman who, from the same orphanage years ago, had a spare room with her family in their small apartment. So she's there now. But let me just tell you, it's not a good situation. She's not truly wanted there, and she knows it. And in addition, in Haiti, it's 80 to 90% unemployment. There's no jobs. There's no student loans. There's no government assistance. There's no safety nets in Haiti. Her family is scattered. They're non-Christian. They're dysfunctional. And she doesn't have a network or a community of people to help her. When we were there last week, we had Rosaline stay with us. And she told us that, she often misses out on possible opportunities because she just doesn't know people. When jobs become available, a family member often helps another family member get that job. So she doesn't get it. And it's common in Haiti for family members to stay with family members for extended periods of time, but that's not an option for her. See, in Haiti, you truly are only as strong as your household. And Rosaline's is not strong. Her network, her tribe, her community is basically made up of other orphans. That's one of the beauties of what John, Claude, and Monica are doing in Haiti. They're bringing these kids into their home and they're creating their own household, their own community. Rosaline spends most of her days alone and isolated. And our partners and Tina, we are doing what we need to do to meet her daily needs. This time when we were there, she asked for money for this, pots and pans. She said that the people that she stays with won't let her use theirs. So we gave her some money, but you know what was unbelievable? Like, she didn't even know where to go buy it or what to buy because she doesn't have that family net, that community around her. See, when your family, your community, and your church is your main means of survival and identity, and you don't have much in that area, you can find yourself really lost and isolated. And folks, please hear me on this from my heart. I think when we fully buy in to our Western sort of culture's belief system that we can do it all on our own, that we don't need family, we don't need a community or a church, I believe you can find yourself waking up one day and feeling very lost and very isolated. But do you know what my biggest concern for Rosaline is? I mean, it's not that she's not going to have a place to stay or something to eat, because we've assured her that we would never let that happen. It's that one day she will fall away from her faith and fall into sin. See, German reformer theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he says this: sin demands to have a man by himself. It withdraws him from community. And the more isolated a person is, the more destructive the power of sin will be over him. Sin wants to remain unknown in the darkness of the unexpressed. There, it poisons the whole being of a person. I believe that Rosaline's lack of community and her isolation leaves her extremely vulnerable to sin. See, and I believe in our American culture of individualism and independence, when you couple that with a lack of community in church, I think it could leave us all very vulnerable to sin. I've heard people along the years say to me, man, I believe in God, but I just don't really think I need church. I can tell you there's a 21-year-old orphan in Haiti that would disagree with you. In our culture, because of the abundance of opportunities and safety nets, I think many people have been fooled or are fooling themselves to believing that they don't need a church community. There is no Northway Christian community without us, without a group of people that are committed to community. Because without that, the church is just a building, right? It may be, a building that offers some, good events and good programs, but without committed people to church community, we're just an isolated group of people going to a building together. Are you committed to church community? Another something here. Have you ever have you ever been somewhere and you smelled something and it caused you to have a good reaction? You know what I mean? Like it brought up a fond memory, or it even put a smile on your face. Hey, on the flip side of that, have you ever smelled something it doesn't have to be a bad smell, but it's something that you smell that all of a sudden it brings up an unpleasant memory, or it makes you sort of have a bad reaction. Example for me, sometimes when I smell baby powder, it just makes me think of my girls when they were babies, right? It's a good smell to me. It puts a smile on my face. Early one morning, a month or so ago, I was jogging through Nob Hill Park up in the North Hills. And I ran through one of their Little League fields there. And I don't know, just the smell of the grass and the dirt and even that baseline chalk, that they mark the baselines with, made me think of my Little League days. I just had this sort of memory. I could remember actually certain games and the kids that I played with. Conversely, sometimes if you've ever smelled something that brings back a not so fond memory, it leaves an unpleasant thought in your mind. A couple weeks ago, I smelled cotton candy, right? And for whatever reason, it made me think of Kennywood. If you're not familiar with Kennywood, Pittsburgh Old School Amusement Park down along the Mon River, I never liked Kennywood, right? And you know what that smell brought back to me? Large crowds. in the sense that I needed a shower immediately. Like that was what came over me when I smelt that and thought about Kennywood. So see, what I want to do is I want to relate a scripture to you that I think draws together smells and also pulls together this profound concept of community. It's found in 2 Corinthians, and it's chapter 2, verse 14. And it says this, "But thanks be to God, who in Christ always leads us in triumphal procession, and through us spreads the fragrance of the knowledge of him everywhere. For we are the aroma of Christ to God among those who are being saved and among those who are perishing. To one, a fragrance from death to death. To other, a fragrance from life to life. Who is sufficient for these things? For we are not, like so many, peddlers of God's word, but as men of sincerity, as commissioned by God in the sight of God, we speak in Christ." And I just asked the teams just to leave that up there for a couple minutes so you can see those words that are in red. See, this word's fragrance, it's deeply connected to a sacrificial offering, specifically the sacrifice of Christ. Again, you can look at it there, right? Jesus, to some, it's a beautiful fragrance, his sacrificial offering. It's a saving aroma. But to others who reject Jesus, it's a fragrance of offense and even death. And if you look at verse 15 there in the middle, it says, "For we are the aroma of Christ." See, this verse could read this way. It could actually read that we are this sacrificial offering to those that we are doing life with. See, our lives should bring knowledge and the essence of who Jesus is to those that we do life with. Northway, is that you? A bigger question, is that us as a church? Is Northway Christian Community bringing the aroma of Christ to the places where we live, work, and play? I said this earlier, I want to say it again. My hope is that Northway never becomes known mostly for its events and programs and preaching and worship, and none of those things are bad, by the way. My hope is that we are known by the way that we love people where they live and where they work and where they play. My hope is that, our aroma, someone that calls Northway home, when we're out there in those places doing life, that it would produce a good reaction, a fond memory. I'm having a lot of trouble with my microphone. A smile to people's faces, right? Folks, in our independent, individualistic culture, here's a sentence, please grab a hold of this. Unchurched people, they're not looking for a friendly church. They're looking for friendly people. What if Northway was known for a church that loved people deeply, right where they lived, worked, and play? How do we do this? First, I think I want to give you, let's get real practical for the close here. I want to give you 3 things I think we got to stop doing. And then I want to sort of build you 3 places that I think we got to start considering being a sacrificial offering, the aroma of Christ. So the first thing that we got to stop doing, we got to stop being so easily offended. Jesus wasn't. He was never offended by non-believers. Christians are perceived as the most easily offended people group on the planet. And we must not let ourselves get so offended or judgmental towards other people's language or their actions or their addictions. What we got to do is we got to let love open the door so that truth can come in and take up residence. The second thing I think we got to stop doing is we got to stop expecting non-Christians to act like Christians. When we do this, we're just putting unfair expectations on people. We got to stop telling people how to behave and start showing them. Let's start being known more for what we're for than for what we're against. Because that's what Jesus did. And this third one, I just struggle with exactly how to word it, so I was just going to be blunt. Stop being a jerk, right? Stop being a jerk. I was at Jiffy Lube in the waiting room a couple months back, and there was a guy in there berating the fellow behind the counter, frankly, because his oil change wasn't too jiffy, right? He wanted it to be a little quicker. And what really saddens me is that it was a Northway guy. It's a guy that goes to Northway. And I've said this quite a few times in the past. If you're going to be a jerk, don't tell people you go to Northway, right? Our desire is to be the aroma of Christ to the world. You know, Rick Warren, he was once asked, what's the best way to reach non-churched people? And I loved his answer. It was simple. He said, be nice. How do you reach non-church people? Be nice. Like that's certainly a starter. In Exodus 12, we find this story of the Pharaoh of Egypt, and he's finally relented, and he's allowing Israel to leave, right? And if you know this story, led by Moses, they begin to leave. And in Exodus 12, verse 37 and 30, I read it, and I never saw this before. But verse 37 says this, and the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth with about 600,000 men on foot. So this is the entire nation of Israel leaving Egypt, plus women and children. And then here it is in verse 38. A mixed multitude also went up with them. You know, I dug into that there was a mixed multitude of people from Egypt that decided they wanted to be part of this Israel community as they left Egypt. They saw something in that community and that they desired to be part of it. They basically were saying, we'd rather connect with that community than stay here. You know, is that us, Northway? Are we loving people so well that they might want to possibly come and be part of our community? So where do we do this? Again, real practical. You got to start seeing the places that you live as an opportunity to be the aroma of Christ. And where's that? It's our homes, it's our neighborhoods, it's our communities. And it begins with being a sacrificial offering. So how can you serve in your neighbors, you know, with your friends? Can you throw a block party? Can you start a service project in your neighborhood? You're going to raise money, raise items for a food bank. Can you take meals to new neighbors where you live? The second thing is we got to become the aroma of God where we work, right? If you were to leave your work today, can I ask you something? Would you be missed? Because just, you know, what amazing person you were to work with, how you humbly served, how you worked hard, how you really cared for the people that you worked with. Do the people at work see you as a high-quality character, sincere, caring person? And then the last one, I frankly think this is the best one. Love the people where you play. What do I mean by that? Leverage the things that you like to do by simply loving people there. Where do you hang out? What are your interests and your hobbies? Folks, in my gym and in the places where I hang out, I don't show up evangelizing. You know what I show up doing? Encouraging. See, in our independent, isolated culture, people are desperate for encouragement. You know, if you could just walk into the places where you play and look for opportunities to encourage people. Let me tell you, that dude at Jiffy Lube needed some encouragement when I stepped up to pay my bill. Be an encourager, and you will be the aroma of Christ. Let me close again with these are difficult statements, so you can agree or disagree with me. I don't believe that you can be an effective aroma of Christ in isolation. And I'll go a step further. I don't believe you can be the aroma of Christ unless you're rooted in a church community. You know, what is This Is Us series as it pertains to Northway? I think we have a clear, uncompromising choice to make. When it comes to the places where we live and where we work and where we play, either we become a pleasing aroma there to a world that is watching, or I think we just run the risk of being just another church that does some good ministries. Next week, I'm going to really dig into what our vision is at Northway and what our core values have always been and are now and will always be. I think it'll give you a clear indication of where we're going and what's at the heart of this church is, so that you can decide whether you want this to be your church community. And then in part 3 of this series, we're going to go live at all of our campus. And we're going to say, this is us, Wexford. What does it look like to be the church here in Wexford? This is us, Dormont. What does it look like to be the church in Dormont, in Sewickley, in East End and Oakland? Those campus pastors will preach live there and speak specifically to their campus. And I'm going to ask each one of those campus pastors to step up now and close out your service.